Sam Bankman-Fried, he's really let down the crypto market.
Yes, he has.
I
You
mean,
are
he's
right.
widely considered the face of the crypto market, even for somebody who knows very little like me. 30 years old, billionaire. He's apparently donated a lot of money. He's a very active lobbyist. So for him to really be the face of this disaster with FTX is just a really very bad look for the whole crypto market.
Yep.
Can you explain what the heck is going on right now?
I mean, I can explain it to some degree. So there's a really long version. Let's try and do the short version. The short version is so Sam is the essentially the owner of, or the biggest shareholder in whatever, the CEO of FTX, which is the second biggest crypto exchange in the world, and they have their name on the Miami Heat arena. It's FTX Arena. They had Super Bowl commercials. Tom Brady is a spokesman for FTX. I mean, it's like hardcore, big time stuff at this point. And they, you know, first of all, they have a venture capital arm. They don't. Sam Bankman-Fried also started a venture capital thing called Alameda Capital, and they basically work in the same office. The high guys are right next door essentially, and they do a lot of transactions with each other. And what this really means is that they lend money to each other, they borrow money from each other, things like that, and then they also lend money out to other places. And it just recently came out on November 2nd, I think it was, that a lot of the money in that sort of backs up both of these companies is really big companies, like multi-billion dollar companies. Even Alameda Capital is something like claimed to have something like 30 billion in assets or something, like maybe it was 10 billion, but deca billions. Is that they were backed by the FTT token, and the FTT token is an Ethereum token that is basically the FTX exchange coin. And it's a popular coin. It had a huge run up. It went all the way from, I bought it at $5 like a little less than 2 years ago. I think it got as high as like $88. It basically was like owning a small share of FTX in some ways, where you got to sort of profit from different pieces of it. It's complicated. I won't get into that piece of it. It doesn't matter. But the point is this: that billions of dollars of FTT was illiquid and locked for both FTX and Alameda Capital. And those were the things they were backstopping their loans with. So what it really means is that if they actually needed to pay out on these loans, they wouldn't be able to. And if the price of FTT drops suddenly, that would also be a real problem. Well, the head of Binance, which is the world's biggest exchange and was an investor in FTX, had something like 2.4. They had millions and millions and millions of I don't know exactly how many anymore, of FTT themselves, and they announced that they were just going to sell it all at once. They said they tweeted that they were going to sell it all, which can only do one thing: it's going to drop the hell out of the price, right? Because everyone's like, oh my god, there's going to be a liquidity event. They're going to sell $220 million worth of this thing, or whatever it is. They're going to sell a huge amount of the supply, and it's going to destroy the price of this. So everyone tried to get out right away. So then that effectively lowered the price and lowered the value of these two companies, FTX and Alameda. So then they were not able to meet their obligations. Like, they no longer had the collateral to meet their obligations, and they were immediately and essentially getting liquidated. They were starting to get liquidated. And this started to spiral and avalanche on down and grow this is going on. Sam Bankman-Fried, our 30-year-old billionaire genius, MIT boy who runs FTX, was tweeting, everything is fine. This is just a rival attacking us. It's not going to be a problem. User deposits are safe. Everything's fine. This was like 2 days ago. I think he tweeted that. So it's 48 hours later. User deposits are very clearly not safe. No one is getting there's some people who are able to get their money out of FTX, but a lot of people are unable to, and it's believed will be unable to for years and years and years, as this is now going to go to bankruptcy court. And the head of Binance actually came out and apparently was offering to buy FTX This is like a day ago now. And that shot the price of FTT sort of back up. And everyone was like, oh, okay. If Binance buys FTX, everything's going to be kind of okay. But they couldn't agree on some stuff and it fell through. And now they're not buying it. And it's unclear if there could be a buyer even for FTX. It's so big and who wants it? I don't know why anyone would want it. And so the markets are in massive free fall, not unlike what we saw in May of 2022 when Luna went to essentially zero in 2 days. That's sort of what we've seen FTT do. And everyone's freaking out. And the belief is that there's also going to be a legislative response to this, like that with all the regulatory stuff that's been in the air, like this is really bad for all of that. Really, really bad. So there's a lot of panic.
And what has the FTT token gone from? How much has it gone down?
It was okay. So when CZ, who's the head of Binance and one of the richest people in the world, tweeted that they were going to sell all of their FTT, it was trading like I think at around $23 per token. It as of yesterday, it was at around $5 a token. I think it's fallen significantly again. I actually haven't checked it since, but I think I'm going to literally check it right now as we're talking. So I'll give you the most updated version of this. I'm scared for the answer. It's at $2.20 a token now. So it's down 51% on the day. It's down 91.2% on the week, just to give you a sense of that. Yeah. So it's gone down a lot. The market cap is still almost $300 million, but that gives you a sense just how big it was. Yeah. Right. If we're down 90% on the week, it was $3 billion not long ago, or nearly $3 billion. So that money just has disappeared.
Yeah. And this was like one of the stars in the crypto world. I mean, it's just got to call into question all of the exchanges, you know? So how many other exchanges have got illiquidity issues and are doing, you know, a version of the same thing that FTX was doing that got them into trouble?
Right. That's a great question. There's a few major exchanges who, at least as an American, I'd really want to know that about. Coinbase and Gemini are the two big ones there. And hopefully they're not engaging in the same kind of behavior. An exchange makes so much money on its own, just existing. It really shouldn't need to do other stuff. But you know how these financial guys are. We saw it in 2008, right? They can't almost help but like be adventurous with their money, it seems, or everyone's money, not just their money, with the money. I'm very hopeful that it's not going to, like, that other exchanges aren't doing these kinds of lending and borrowing deals and they don't need to do that. But I don't know that that's the case at all. And it's worrisome for sure. They always say you shouldn't keep your money in exchanges. One of the things we say in crypto is not your keys, not your crypto, meaning like you have to hold the keys yourself. You should be self-custodying your crypto. The truth is a lot of people aren't really equipped for that or don't want to learn how to do it anyway. Eventually banks will custody the crypto, but we're not there yet. And so we're in this in-between stage where, yeah, centralized exchanges are problematic and may just continue to be.
Wow. So SEC Chairman Gary Gensler said the broader crypto market is like a stack of Jenga blocks that gets weaker with each failure. So does this sort of concern you when you think about, let's say, you know, particularly, I suppose, with the decentralized finance or the smart contract stuff where you were lending funds to, you know, was it exchanges that you were lending it to? You know, you're putting up stakes where they were giving you a return. Is that something that is now a worry for you?
Sure. I mean, the decentralized stuff is different in most cases than the centralized stuff in terms of lending. Usually with decentralized lending, you're not lending to any one person in particular, right? You're just sort of lending to whoever wants it, and they put up collateral against that, and the collateral gets auto-liquidated as the value of the collateral starts to drop. So you're pretty protected in a decentralized manner, actually. It's one of the great things about this stuff. That isn't the case necessarily with something like FTX. If FTX is lending a bunch or borrowing a bunch of money, I should say, and someone's lending to them, and there's institutional lenders where this absolutely happens, where, you know, Sam Bankman-Fried gets on the phone with you and says, listen, we have 50 billion in assets. Like, give me a break here. Okay. Yeah. We're having some cash flow issues today, but like, obviously we're good for it. And, you know, as a human being, it's hard to say, we need you to pay us now anyway, and then be able to actually, you know, enforce that. But the decentralized exchanges there's no one to talk to. Sam Bankman-Fried can't get on the phone with anyone. It's just code. So those things always get paid back first, actually, well ahead of any centralized or humans who would get paid, because people want to get their assets out because their assets are worth more than what they borrowed almost always. So actually this is actually really a case for decentralization, true decentralization, for decentralized exchanges, decentralize everything. Not to say we can only have that, but like these big crypto exchanges maybe can't really exist for the long haul, because these are problems that probably won't stop happening. It seems like they keep happening. It's really problematic.
Well, it seems like the answer to it is regulation.
Sure. The concern is that there's going to be an overcompensation now because of what's happened, and that they'll overregulate and it'll kill the industry. It'll choke, maybe not kill, but it'll choke some of the things that could have happened otherwise. So when we're talking about like, am I worried about the future? I'm a little more worried about it, because if this hadn't happened, I felt like we were moving towards a reasonable regulatory environment for crypto in the United States anyway. And I don't know, maybe it'll be fine anyway, but we just lost a lot of lobbying money and a major lobbyist, which is Sam Bankman-Fried. Also, now they've got another thing to point to of like, we have to regulate you really heavily and intensely. I can't say they're wrong about that. I understand why they would feel that way. And I'm concerned that it might stifle innovation and growth in the US in terms of crypto stuff anyway. And I hope that's not the case. Maybe this will all blow over in a year or 2 or 6 months, and there'll be new things and shiny new toys to be looking at, and it won't be an issue. And this will just be a blip on the radar. Right now, it doesn't feel like that, but we're in the eye of the storm too.
So Sam Bankman-Fried said, I'm deeply sorry that we got into this place and for my role in it, which seems to indicate, that he agrees that they're not in a good place and that there's something to be sorry for, and that he's really participated in whatever that was. So the fact that somebody who was held up as a success story and a paragon, like as a crypto skeptic, it just, the worst things that you might assume about the crypto market, the people talk about the, Madoff and a Ponzi scheme, and, taking money and just sort of manipulating this cash, the statements, so that people think that there's all this liquidity there when there really isn't. I guess it makes me wonder if he's doing this, and we had, who was it who went under? Was it Celsius?
Celsius
that was like 6 months ago. Yeah. So is there any parallels between this and what happened at Celsius?
Yeah, I think there is. I mean,
what are they?
In the end, any exchange, and Celsius wasn't exactly an exchange, but people lent them their money. But any place that can't, especially an exchange though, that can't cover user withdrawals, means that they're taking the money that people have and are doing things with it, right? And I guess if you're being very upfront that that's what you're doing, that's one thing. Celsius actually was being upfront about that. Celsius got themselves in other issues. But FTX claimed they were not doing that with user deposits, but it seems like they must have been, because they're not paying out on withdrawals to everyone right now. And they should have everyone's money available and easy to withdraw, regardless of what else is happening. But that's not what's happening. Sam Bankman-Fried testified in front of, I believe it was Congress. I think it was at least a congressional hearing, I think, where he said that they, essentially don't do anything, they don't touch user deposits. And that seems clearly not to be the case, because if that was the case, they would easily be able to pay everyone out and there wouldn't be any issues, right? Like there might be issues for the company, but no one would be getting screwed. And instead, people are getting screwed badly. There's one of the top crypto traders in the world who actually I met back in the day. His name is Alex Weiss, and he does something, millions of dollars a day in trading, and is one of the most profitable people out there, and is worth God knows how much money. His entire net worth was on FTX, and he can't get it. And maybe he'll get it in 5 or 10 years, maybe. But I mean, he put out a tweet yesterday saying, looking for a new opportunity. Here's what I'm good at, and it wasn't a joke. Maybe it was slightly, with tongue in cheek, but mostly he was like, yeah, I'm kind of done with this. He literally lost everything, and I'm not clear if he's going to get it back, and neither is he. And if he does, it's still going to be a very, very long time.
Wow. That's incredible.
I mean, it's incredible.
And I will just say that, like, we don't know for certain what has occurred and, what what FTX has actually done and what role Sam Bankman-Fried has played in that. We're just speculating, but the current moment, it really does not look good. And if it doesn't look good for him, and if that, wasn't true, and he said, that all these assets are safe and they're all backed by collateral, if that's not true, and he's saying, even a couple of days ago, he was saying that, and if also Celsius was saying a few days before they basically went bankrupt, like everything's fine, then
Right.
who do you trust?
Right. I mean, I think the real point of crypto is you shouldn't ever trust anyone. You shouldn't have to. Right. Trustless. That's the idea of crypto. It's not important, but it's been co-opted into this centralized thing which is the system we're used to, where we pick people to trust. We decide to trust Chase Bank or, any Merrill Lynch, and we let them hold our assets. E-Trade, we let them hold our assets, right? They hold our stock portfolios for us. We don't have our stocks. They've though, 50 years, 70 years of proof that they're not going to screw that part up. And there's heavy regulation around that, right? And so if they were to screw that up, there's ways to, we're essentially protected as consumers, or at least we feel protected as consumers. And the crypto space co-opted that model, but without the regulation around it. And we believed, I say we as the general crypto audience anyway, believed that it was ultimately going to be the same kind of level of trust, and they were going to be worthy of that. But the idea of Bitcoin and Ethereum and all that is you never have to trust anyone. That's what a decentralized exchange is. Remember, the idea is like, I don't need a buyer, I don't need a seller. I'm buying and selling into liquidity pools. No one can screw me over. I can't screw them over. Like, I'm getting the price it says I'm getting. That's it. I'm getting it automatically. It's all in a code and contract, and it's the smart contract, so it's automatic. No one can take my money and just walk away. But that's not the way most people operate within the crypto space, right? Most people buy some stuff, leave it on these exchanges, and assume it's going to be fine because that's how it works with Merrill Lynch and that's how it works with their bank. And I thought it would be fine too, to be clear. I mean, I have some money on one exchange, not FTX, I'm happy to say. Mostly I don't keep my money there. Mostly I self-custody because I don't really like the idea of ever being beholden to anyone else in terms of money,
So Bitcoin is down 75% from its highs in November 2021. It's the first time since November 2020 that it's around that 16,000 mark. What is a pathway toward Bitcoin going down another 33% down into that 10,000 range? What do you think would happen at this point for that to occur?
I mean, I don't know if anything has to happen. It may happen naturally at this point, as more people exit the space and are just afraid based on this news. If this continues to blow up and get worse, if there are more companies around this that like lent to Alameda and FTX and can't get paid, and they all go bankrupt, essentially, there's massive insolvencies. There may not need to be anything else to ultimately bring the price level down to 10,000. Another big piece of news, I don't know if anything could rival this level of news, but another really big piece of bad news, though, along these lines would also be devastating to the prices of these things in the short term, at least. Possibly the long term, but certainly the short term. But again, I don't even know if we need that. This may be the event which ultimately takes it all down to $10,000. It's possible.
What was the other thing that has occurred? Did you say something else has occurred?
No, I mean, no. I just mean if there were a second event,
right.
Like
there's other,
because this came out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
Like if Coinbase suddenly has something like, oh my God, Coinbase also can't pay out, right. Like that would be, I mean, Bitcoin might drop to $5,000 if Coinbase also right now, because there'd be so much panic and so much freaking out. And then, some people might be buying up a lot of Bitcoin right around those prices. Right. But most people would be panic selling, I think.
And given the dominoes that are already falling currently, is there a pathway in the near term back to that 20,000 and beyond level that you can see?
Sure, there are pathways. I think it's the normal stuff. Ultimately, it's like there's a Bitcoin ETF approved in the United States, a spot Bitcoin ETF that would really push things the other way. Maybe someone will emerge as a buyer for FTX. That would be a really big deal, and that would backstop all this stuff. That's actually what Sam Bankman-Fried did for not for Celsius, but he did it for BlockFi, and he did it for a number of other sometimes exchanges, sometimes one of these sort of lending, borrowing houses. He bought up a bunch of them and backstopped them all. And just not long ago, in May, he did this. And then here we are. He's on the other side of it so quickly. So if there's somehow there's a white knight buyer which wants to come in, I don't know who that could be. Visa? I have no sense of who would want to buy this at this company and why. But maybe there's someone out there where it makes sense for them to. I think that would push prices more or less, maybe not for FTT, but for the general crypto market back to more or less where we were before this all happened. So that was Bitcoin was around 20,000. I would think we'd get close to there anyway. And then, one other piece of really good news just in general in the Bitcoin space, i.e., another country's decided to adopt Bitcoin as a currency. That would be a big deal. More states in the United States say we're accepting cryptocurrency for taxes. That would be a big deal. Stuff like that, which those things I think probably will happen, but I don't know if they're going to happen in the next 6 to 12 months. I'd be surprised, especially with this current whirlwind of news. But those kinds of things could push it the other way.
Yeah, this seems like it makes all of those things more unlikely.
Yeah.
So someone had described on Twitter, they'd used a metaphor of, hey, I own this one company, which was basically FTX, and it has 28 pencils. And these pencils are worth $1 billion a piece. And then I own this other company, which was in this metaphor, Alameda, and they're going to buy one of the pencils for $1 billion. Or I own 28 pencils. This other company will buy one pencil for $1 billion. Therefore, I have $28 billion.
Right.
And that was their explanation for what perhaps has occurred in this space. Does that hold water with you, or what are your thoughts about that metaphor?
I don't entirely buy that. I think that's a very simplified version of it. Like Alameda can't buy. It was $3 billion worth of FTT not long ago, and Alameda didn't own that much of it. I mean, they owned a big enough chunk that it sunk them, but the world owns a lot of FTT, and is myself included. I was definitely a holder of a bunch of FTT, and we all got destroyed. There was clearly public sentiment that this was. FTX was a very powerful company that was growing fast, and owning FTT seemed like a really good idea, and it was just going up and up and up, and there was no obvious reason to think that FTX wasn't going to be a major player in the crypto space for decades. And it seemed like, getting in early on Amazon and Apple kind of a thing, and it really looked like this, they were becoming right before our eyes. Tom Brady was their spokesman. It was incredible to watch, to actually see something like that, having gotten in before any of that happened. So I don't think that's entirely fair. That kind of thing happens for sure, not just in crypto, but that happens in the real estate market too, right? Where people will essentially set the market with themselves or with conspirators. And that can be problematic for sure, but you still need other people to believe it. And, like other people still have to not do their due diligence as well. Now, if you're buying small amounts, you're not going to do due diligence, but if you're buying major amounts, if you're lending money to a place like Alameda in the billions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars, and you're not doing that level of due diligence, that's at least somewhat on you, right? Obviously it's on Alameda more, but like you're the one who's responsible for the money you lend out. And so you have to lend it out very carefully. And everyone's a little bit to blame when that kind of stuff happens, I think.
Well, my understanding of, like, let's say the boiler room strategy from what was that movie with
Boiler Room? Was it Boiler Room?
There was Boiler Room, but there was also the one that was a little more recent that was with that famous actor, Leonardo DiCaprio. So was that
the
one where
Wolf of Wall Street?
Wolf of Wall Street, right? Remember? So they had that room with all the guys where they would get all hyped up, and they would choose some penny stock, and then they would just like market the hell out of it. They're calling everybody, this stock is going up, and they were the first buyers, I believe. Like they would start sort of like pumping it. And then it was the pump and dump where, we put in whatever. If you're a big whale, you could put in $1 million, 2 million, 10 million, 20 million into something. The price is going up and up and up. You're marketing the hell out of it. And then as the little guys start to get in and it goes up from, let's say 20 up to 30, per share, per token or whatever, then it's like, all right, out. And then,
Hmm.
as it crashes down, the little guys all lose out. And the guy who sort of was doing the pump and dump scheme makes his money. So that's illegal. Do you think that's happening in the crypto space?
Absolutely, hugely, massively. It's a real problem. It's been a real problem. Um, One of the ways most of retail decides what crypto they're interested in is via influencers. So you have the YouTubers you like or the podcasts you like, and you listen to what they have to say, and they'll tell you about new coins that they're excited about, that they're buying, or here's why this one's got a great chance to make it. And most of the influencers are bought and paid for by the coins themselves. Like whoever's behind the coin, they're saying, hey, we'll give you this many coins, and the incentive is very clear for that person to basically create exit liquidity for all of them. So that is a huge problem. That's not a problem for the really big coins, to be clear. This isn't happening in the top 10 or the top 20 kinds of coins. But this is a real thing that absolutely has happened and continues to happen and is problematic.
So obviously that's just super speculative, almost like gambling, even though it's not presented that way.
Yeah.
Um, so from the point of view of somebody who's been in the crypto market now for a few years, and you've sort of been in your Bitcoins and your Ethereums, but also you've kind of invested or speculated more widely. What percentage, from your point of view, of the whole market is just pure speculation, and what percentage is based more on something like Bitcoin, or something that you see as more of a long term play?
Right. Well, Bitcoin is 36.5% of the entire crypto market cap all by itself, and Ethereum is another 16.4. So just those two are more than half of all of crypto in terms of the money that's in it. If you push out to the rest of the top 10, I'd have to look. I don't know exactly, but I would guess the rest of the top 10 would now fill that out to, a much higher number, probably something like 70% is my guess. So I think it's fair to say at least 30% of crypto is entirely speculation. And maybe you could probably pump that up a little bit more. A lot of people would argue Bitcoin and Ethereum are entirely speculation. I wouldn't, but a lot of people would. You might. And I couldn't push back too hard on that, especially on days like today, where the fact that they can drop 15% in a day, that's still possible, like says something about what's really driving the price, which feels like this belief in what the speculative belief in terms of what could happen, and then the emotional response of when something looks a little scary and people getting out quickly. It all feels very emotional, which then is less about the fundamentals of these coins and what they might be able to do. And so what's the true price? What's the true value of these things? I think they're much higher than what they are right now. But maybe I could be proven wrong about that. Maybe Bitcoin has real value in the world and Ethereum has real value in the world, but maybe that value is $1,000 for Ethereum and $5,000 for Bitcoin. I don't think that's right, but it's hard to know because so much around the things that determine the price is investor excitement or fear of missing out or fear of getting crushed and just bailing. And there's so much of that. It's hard to know.
So I find it really interesting that, Bitcoin, let's say, has come down quite quickly from 20,000 to around 16,000.
Yeah.
And then we have Binance pulling out of this deal to purchase FTX. Obviously, as they looked closer at the numbers, they saw some things they didn't like. So they pull out of that. And yet Bitcoin's still sort of holding somewhat steady over the last half a day anyway, at this 16,000 level. Any thoughts on why that might be?
Well, I mean, when when Binance announced they weren't going to do the deal, Bitcoin dropped, like the whole market dropped another 12 to 15% pretty quickly. And they just have found a floor right now, which is where we are. And it's actually it still feels like quicksand. Like it does keep going down, but it's slowed. The descent has slowed pretty dramatically, at least for now, as everyone's sort of catching their breath and waiting to see if it's really as bad as it seems. And also, maybe a lot of the panic already happened now. And so maybe the people who are apt to panic have already panicked. We'll see if there's no more bad news anyway. But I think Bitcoin's been pretty responsive to this in a negative way, to this news. Like, I don't think it's like, oh, we were at 16 and Binance isn't buying it. We're still at 16. I think it was like, they were like at 18. And then Binance wasn't buying it. Now they're at like 15.9. And that feels like a significant drop off. And I think it's solely because of that news,
It's
or
bounced
almost
back up
entirely.
another 5% now, and it's up around
Oh,
16.6.
oh, well, that's wonderful. Show some heart, buddy. You can do it.
So there's a lot of uncertainty at the moment, and it's going to be really interesting watching the space over the next, what period of time would you say for this to play out?
Um, well, there's going to be long-term events that happen around this, probably like over, so probably 3 years from now, stuff legally happening with people getting paid out or not, maybe 5 years, maybe 9 years as well, where there'll be things that will affect the market from this. But I think in terms of mostly, I think we're talking more like, I mean, look, the Luna thing happened in May of 2022. It's November of 2022, and it feels like a million years ago. It affected the price of things. It probably is still affecting the price of things. Like, I don't think that went away, but it's like seen as like, miles away. It's people talk about it as if it happened a decade ago and think of it as if it happened. I do, and myself included. So I wouldn't be surprised if 6 months from now it feels similarly of like, boy, that was the thing that happened. Wow. And but I think we're just going to be in a bear market probably anyway, as this feels like we're just heavily in this bear cycle right now. And if it holds to what it's been the last several times, it means we're probably going to stay in this bear cycle for another year and a half, 2 years anyway. So it'll just be part of the slow, like, as the prices continue to get sort of compressed downward for a while. And then there'll be another Bitcoin halving. And then hopefully it'll go back the way it always did before and reach new highs. And it'll be glorious. And everyone will say, this time it's different. We will never have a cycle like that again. And everyone's adopting it now and everyone gets it now. And that's what we said this time. But maybe we'll say it again next time.